Leveling is an important aspect of any MMO. A lot of time and effort goes into the sound effect that plays and the graphic displayed when you gain a level. There's a reason people to this day still say ding when they level up. That was the sound effect EverQuest played when you leveled. It was that iconic. World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV have pretty different leveling experiences, all things considered, even though at the end of the day you are doing very similar things. So, in this video, let's compare the leveling experiences in World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. So, in World of Warcraft, much of the leveling is done through questing. WoW was revolutionary with how it changed leveling in MMOs, basically making questing the de facto way to go about leveling your characters. Before WoW came along and changed the landscape, leveling was mostly done through pulling enemies and killing them one by one in a farm spot. You would barely move around and just stay in your safe space, killing enemies. So, I haven't touched WoW in a very long time. Been playing Final Fantasy XIV, obviously, and I forgot just how balls-to-the-wall crazy this game starts off. Within the first few minutes of the game, you are on a boat that gets shipwrecked onto an island called Exile's Reach. You don't have time to catch your breath before this game thrusts you right on into the action. It's like a Michael Bay movie. And it's a very engaging experience. Exile's Reach was a fantastic tutorial zone, where you go from levels 1 through 10 while the game teaches you what to expect. This area progresses at a very fast pace, with your goal being saving crew members from ogres and necromancers. You know, as you do. And the overall goal of saving the island from being corrupted by the self-same ogres. Now, to match this fast pacing, combat feels just as fast. The 1 second global cooldown does wonders to make combat feel more quick-paced. You don't have that many abilities to use at low levels, but since the global cooldown is so fast, you don't really feel that. Anyways, they end this experience by way of a dungeon, which, by the way, is the only dungeon the game requires you to go through. Before they added this, you could easily go from level 1 to level cap without ever entering a dungeon or grouping up. So I think it was a good thing that they added this required dungeon to break the ice for new players. The dungeon itself was very short, a few enemies to kill here and there, very basic boss fights, and it ends with a dragon fight. And who doesn't love a nice, cool dragon fight? Like I said previously, it is a very easy dungeon, but its purpose was to get you used to, you know, playing dungeons, seeing how the different roles worked. And for that, I have nothing but praise. Once you slay the dragon and save the island from the corruption of the ogres, you are then sent to your capital city, in my case, Stormwind, and from there it's just a whirlwind. Like, within 10 minutes of getting into Stormwind, the king is hailing you as this hero and sending you on a vital mission to Kul Tiras to help Jaina Proudmoore with a horde problem. You are this brand new adventurer and already have this much respect and trust and responsibility. Speaking of which, if you are a new player, are you going to have any idea of who Jaina is, or Anduin, or any of the characters that were shown to you during this scene? Like I said for Exile's Reach, the pacing is very fast. You are not given ample time to breathe. It's just one thing after the other. If you don't care about story or characters and just really want to get into the action, well, then World of Warcraft will not disappoint you. So, when it comes to the actual leveling mechanics, well, there's obviously questing. The quests in World of Warcraft are pretty varied. I mean, right at Exile's Reach, you get a pretty good idea of all the types of quests you will be doing. One of my favorites was when you got to ride an enlarged boar and smash up an ogre camp. It's that kind of questing that I think WoW does really well. And if questing isn't quite your thing, you can also run dungeons that are around your level range. You could also PvP if that's more up your alley. There are some other various ways to gain experience, but you don't gain much. For example, if you picked a gathering profession, whenever you mine or pick herbs, you get a little bit of experience. And when you find chests in the world, at least in some expansions, you will also get a little bit of experience. You can also level through a feature called Pet Battling, which is basically WoW's spin on Pokemon. You can capture a variety of critters and then make them your pets, and then you battle them in a very Pokemon battle-like system against other pet trainers and critters that you can find on the field. It is a pretty fun system, and I did enjoy it for a bit, but much like Pokemon, I wound up burning out on it. With that being said, you can get some decent XP for whatever class you are doing this for. Now, when it comes to leveling alts, once you have a level 50 character, you unlock the ability to level all of your alts through a feature called Chromie Time, which basically lets you go to whatever expansion you want to, and then you get a level over there. It makes it so you have some variety with where you level different classes. You also get different dungeon sets to run, so it is a pretty cool feature. Finally, there's also Torghast, which you can level your character from 50 to 60 with in Shadowlands. Torghast is basically a roguelike that grants the player a bunch of powers that really can alter the way they play. It is a very wacky experience, and it can be a nice break from regular dungeons and questing. I quit before this was an option, so I really have no experience with it, but it does sound cool. I think the leveling experience in WoW is really good, but it does come at a cost. The story is that cost, and if you care at all about narrative, characters, lore, well, it can be very hard to follow with how the game goes about its leveling. Chromie Time just exasperates the issue since I really don't know how a new player would be able to follow what's going on. It really does seem to be designed in such a way that entices new players to just skip everything. On the other hand, if those are things you don't care about and we're going to be skipping everything anyways, well, then you won't have any problems here. So, if World of Warcraft's leveling is not very focused on narrative and story, well, Final Fantasy XIV's leveling experience would be the polar opposite. The main method of leveling your very first job would be doing something called the Main Scenario Quest, or MSQ for short. Now, something that is very different than WoW is that your progression is very much tied to the MSQ. In Final Fantasy XIV, you have to do the MSQ to progress. You can't just level up your character, like in WoW, and then go to the next expansion. Expansions are locked behind the story. Your level doesn't matter if you haven't progressed far enough into the MSQ. In fact, pretty much everything is locked behind the MSQ. That includes the dungeons and the raids. Now, since every job is on one character, and the MSQ could be possibly used with clever managing of XP to level up 2, maybe 3 jobs, Final Fantasy XIV actually has a variety of ways to go about leveling up your jobs. For whatever reason, in Final Fantasy XIV, I enjoy leveling up all the jobs, which is weird because in WoW, I never had more than 2 alts at any given time. I think it has to do with how every job is on one character, so it just feels like I am progressing that one character. So let's go over the choices you have to gain levels in Final Fantasy XIV. You have the Duty Roulette, where you have the option to be thrown randomly into dungeons, raids, trials, etc. Each day, you will be rewarded with a nice experience bump for completing these, marked with an open chest in the menu when done. The Leveling Roulette and the MSQ Roulette are the ones that give the most experience, so those are usually the ones I go for. Of course, you also have the option to just run dungeons normally. There is also the Challenge Log, which is basically free experience for doing activities you were most likely going to do anyways, like running dungeons and giving out player commendations. There are other ways the Challenge Log rewards XP, such as by completing Fates and Leave quests. Speaking of which, there's Fates and Leave quests. Fates are essentially events happening in the world. Some are as simple as kill a bunch of monsters, while others are bosses that require full raids to clear. Leave quests are, they're basically just quests that you can accept from special NPCs, and they tend to be pretty short and give good experience. Personally, I never do leave quests, but it is an option. Fates, on the other hand, I will usually do if I see them up while going through a zone. Hard to pass up free experience points, right? In Shadowbringers and beyond, Fates actually can level up your reputation in a zone. and reward a special currency called bicolor gems that you can use to trade for special items. Much like WoW, you can also level doing PvP. If you are anything like me and not a huge fan of PvP, the Duty Roulette actually has a pretty good option to gain a lot of experience. That option being Frontlines, which is basically a huge three-way battle between alliances. Despite not being a huge fan of PvP, when I am leveling another job, I try to make sure to hit this one up. The matches aren't too long, and win or lose, you will get a nice bump in XP just for being there. There is also Heaven on High and Palace of the Dead, which are Final Fantasy XIV's take on the deep dungeon / roguelike games. It's a separate progression path that starts you at level 1, you have a variety of unique items you use to help advance, and it's a good deal of fun. Now, there is a lot going on with the deep dungeons, but the point is, once you clear 10 floors, you get rewarded a nice bump of experience for whatever job you entered with. There's also Beast Tribe quests, which act as Final Fantasy XIV's rep grinds, and the good news is, the quests tend to be very short and easy to complete. Now, the way they work in Final Fantasy XIV is, you have tribes that give you quests for crafters, gatherers, and for your combat jobs. Now, I don't have much experience getting experience from tribes outside of the tribes for Shadowbringers. Wow, that's a weird sentence. But I literally leveled my Black Mage from 70 to 80 just doing these quests. As you can see in the footage above, I gained 1/5 of my Dragoon's level doing those quests, and it only took me about 4 minutes to complete. And that is a lot of experience for not a lot of effort. There is also the Wondrous Tales, which is basically running certain bits of content, such as specific dungeon level ranges or raids, and if you do 9 of the 16 options presented, you can hand the journal in for enough experience to gain half of a level. This is only doable once a week, by the way. The wonderful thing about this feature is you can run the content unsynced and still get credit. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the Bozjan front, which is available at level 71 and is basically a whole separate zone where you will be running a bunch of skirmishes. There is also something called critical engagements, which are basically raid encounters that spawn from doing enough of the skirmishes. You get a ton of experience doing these, and a lot of players actually level from 71 all the way to 90 doing the Bozjan front. Now, I'm sure I missed some things you could do to level up your jobs, but the point is that there is a lot of options, which I think is fantastic. So, I was actually surprised. I forgot how much fun leveling can be in World of Warcraft. Now, despite the fact that I was having fun leveling in WoW, I never really leveled many alts. Whereas in Final Fantasy XIV, well, just look at my character sheet. You can see I've leveled many jobs up. It's probably just me. I did have friends that leveled many alts when they were playing World of Warcraft. For me, I guess, I just preferred putting all my time and energy into my main, rather than diverting energies to alts. But in Final Fantasy XIV, my main is all these jobs, so it feels like it's an effort to progress my main. Anyways, the big difference between the two games, when it comes to leveling, really boils down to how much do you like story. I am not trying to imply that if you hate story, you won't like Final Fantasy XIV, because I do think Final Fantasy XIV offers more than enough outside of the story to enjoy. Anyways, that's all for today. If you enjoyed this, please consider leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing. Thanks again, and until next time, have a good one.